caught in the crossfire. It's caught in the.
What's up, guys? Lance the Obscure Movie Guy coming to you once again, bringing you another fun-filled, fact-filled movie video that most of you probably won't care about. I'm not going to take that back. Some of you might actually care about this film because we're going to talk about somebody a little bit more mainstream today, which I know is a little bit of a change of pace. However, we are going to dive into the obscurities of said mainstream actor. But today I want to focus on Michael Keaton. And you know, if Betty White was America's grandma and Bob Saget was America's dad, then Michael Keaton's got to be the fun-loving American uncle. Everybody loves Michael Keaton. There's no reason not to. The original Batman, well, shouldn't say the original Batman, but he was by far the best Batman. He did a perfect disposition between Bruce Wayne and Batman. He played both roles really well. Christian Bale did a really good job as Batman, not so much as Bruce Wayne. George Clooney did a really good Bruce Wayne. Horrible Batman all the way around. And Val Kilmer, well, you've heard me talk about that in a previous video, and that just was not a good suit for him, figuratively and physically. But I want to talk about Michael Keaton. He's obviously making headlines. He's been in the MCU a couple of times now. He's coming back as Batman in the DC's Flashpoint for Flash, and then they're doing a Batgirl movie. And we're all hoping that they will do Batman Beyond and use Michael Keaton as the older Bruce Wayne to train a new protege to take over the throne as Batman. So he's got a lot going for him right now, a bit of a resurgence in his career. So I wanted to take a look back at some of his more obscure stuff for a number of reasons. Obviously, the timing is right. He's, back in the mainstream a little bit. I got a couple of guys. I got one guy at work that is, we all call him Batman. He knows who he is. Loves Batman, loves Michael Keaton. Mark, you've seen Mark in a couple of my videos, one of my best friends, loves Michael Keaton, Batman. So, I mean, the timing was right. I've got people that are interested that would probably don't know a whole lot about some of these other movies. So I definitely wanted to touch on some. We know him from a lot of his popular stuff. Obviously, Batman, Beetlejuice, Mr. Mom. And then, like I said, more recently as Vulture in the Spider-Man MCU movies. But he's also done some obscure stuff, and he's also done some real stinkers. First Daughter, Multiplicity. But those movies were not necessarily bad because of Michael Keaton. You always get really good performance out of Michael Keaton, regardless of what he does. But I want to take a look at three movies that are obviously a bit obscure, even for somebody that has the star power of Michael Keaton. And he wasn't always a huge star, but let's take a dive back in time before Batman to 1988. And take a look back at a movie called Clean and Sober. Clean and Sober is a 1988 American drama film directed by Glenn Gordon Caron, starring Michael Keaton, Kathy Baker, Emmett Walsh, Morgan Freeman, and Tate Donovan. Daryl Pointner is a successful but self-destructive Philadelphia real estate agent who is addicted to cocaine and embezzles $92,000 of his company's money from an escrow account, and then promptly loses $52,000 of it to his addiction and the stock market. Waking up one morning next to a girl who suffered a heart attack from a cocaine overdose, he tries to cover up the drug use, but the police make it clear they know what happened. There's also the matter of the company's money that is missing. Daryl goes to the airport to flee the country, but his credit card is declined. He has no cash. And his colleague Martin also refuses to put him up for a couple weeks while he tries to hide and dodge the cops. Daryl then learns of a drug rehabilitation program on the radio that lasts about a month and which guarantees anonymity. He checks in figuring he can hide out at the rehabilitation center, and while in rehab he meets Craig, a tough but supportive drug rehabilitation counselor who was a former addict himself. And with great difficulty, Greg helps Daryl realize that he is an addict and that his life is a complete mess and utter chaos. He says to him the best way to break old habits is to make new ones. Clean and Sober is actually a really, really good flick. It's a really interesting film to watch. And it's one of those films that the more you watch it, the more you begin to see different nuances into the other characters and how deep they actually dive into this, not just his addiction, but just addiction in general and other addictions. Obviously, he is addicted to cocaine and alcohol. There's other characters in there that are addicted to other substances. Obviously, he's also got an addiction with the stock market, almost a gambling type addiction. So it's really interesting. The more you watch it, the more you pick up on these nuances. You see something a little different and a little new almost every single time you watch it. I've watched it about 3 times, and each time I'm a little taken back by something else that I didn't catch the first time around or even the second time around. So really good movie. And it's also like the first film in which Keaton kind of steps away from doing the comedy stuff. Obviously, prior to this, he was, he'd done like Night Shift, Johnny Dangerously, Mr. Mom, Gung Ho, all things that were very comedy oriented. And this was really the first time that he stepped into a major dramatic role. And during an early release for it, I think it was John Peters who was doing the casting for Batman, saw an early release of it, and he was the one that was that kind of inspired him to hire or try and get Michael Keaton as Bruce Wayne / Batman for 1989's Batman. Bam! Got to make sure I'm wearing the right shirt for the right video. So, really good flick. And then coming off of Batman, obviously, you like I said, he probably did the best mixture of Bruce Wayne and Batman compared to anybody else that's done it before or since. Now, obviously, Robert Pattinson's getting ready to take on the throne in The Batman, and then Ben Affleck did it for a little while in some of the DCEU movies. Interestingly enough, Ben Affleck is the only actor to play Batman that did not get his own solo film. All of Ben Affleck's Batman portrayals was in accordance with another movie, not an actual Batman movie. Regardless, that's a fun fact for you. But moving on, Michael Keaton, the next movie I want to touch on, another really good movie, at least in my opinion, but it's 1990's Pacific Heights. Pacific Heights is a 1990 American psychological thriller film directed by John Schlesinger, written by Daryl Pine, starring Michael Keaton, Mathew Modine, and Melanie Griffith. Unmarried couple Patty and Drake, played by Melanie Griffith and Mathew Modine, move into an expensive dream home in the high-end neighborhood of Pacific Heights in San Francisco. As they renovate the house, they look for a tenant for the first floor housing, where they come across Carter Hayes, played by Michael Keaton. Carter seems like a great fit, but as it transpires, he is nothing but a con artist who plans to swindle them out of their real estate. As Hayes tries to drive them out of their own home, the couple must take drastic measures to fight back. Michael Keaton in this movie is a straight dick, and he does it really, really well. Again, shaking off that comedy kind of texture from his acting career. He did Clean and Sober, then he did Batman, and he does Pacific Heights. It's 3 films in a row where it was definitely out of the norm for, or what would be considered the norm for him at the time. Plays a really, really good bad guy, really creepy, and the stuff that he does to this poor couple, trying to rid them of this house and take it over for himself. At one point he unleashes cockroaches in the house. He sexually assaults Melanie Griffith in the movie, the character at least. A lot of bad stuff. He's a good bad guy, and it all comes to a head at the end of the film. Now, realistically, this film seems to be really kind of like a love it or hate it type thing. The Metascore online is like 50%. Rotten Tomatoes is like 50%. It's really a love-hate type thing. But there's one thing that's undoubted in this movie is that Michael Keaton does an amazing job. Really, I think the problem lies actually with the rest of the cast. Mathew Modine's a really good actor. Melanie Griffith, though, she seems to be hit and miss, and it's to my understanding that she complained a lot during the movie. She had another movie that came out that year. I don't remember what it was called. Probably wasn't very good. But Mathew Modine, and there's other various reports that she did a lot of complaining throughout the course of the movie. And the chemistry between Modine and Griffith, I don't think was really, it didn't work out well. There's a couple of scenes, and the story arc from Modine's character is kind of weird because he goes from kind of like a yuppie to somebody that he himself almost gets turned crazy, and you wonder if he's going to be the one that turns out to be the psycho in this movie. But I think Modine tried to overplay the character a little bit to try and make up for the lack of enthusiasm and chemistry on Melanie Griffith's side. So if you don't like the movie, it's probably because of them, but you will enjoy the performance of Michael Keaton in the movie for sure. Creepy, real creepy guy. And you hate to see that out of somebody as nice as Michael Keaton, but that goes to show the type of range that Keaton has, where he can do something as ridiculous as Mr. Mom or Beetlejuice, and then something as bone-chilling as Carter Hayes in this movie. So, really good stuff. And the last one I want to talk about is actually a little bit more of a mainstream film. Maybe not to some of the... I don't know how you put it. It's mainstream in the fact that it got a lot of accolades for the film. It did really well in a limited release, grossed a lot of money. But I don't know a lot of people that have actually watched this movie. I didn't watch it until recently, simply because I've heard of it. I knew what it was. It didn't strike me as something that I would enjoy. But after sitting down and watching this next one I'm going to talk about, I was really taken back by not just the performances of the actors, but the way the film was shot and the cinematography of it. It's 2014's Birdman. Birdman is a 2014 American black comedy drama film directed by Alejandro Inarritu. I'm pretty sure I'm saying that wrong. It stars Michael Keaton, Zach Galifianakis, Edward Norton, Amy Ryan, Emma Stone, and Naomi Watts. Michael Keaton plays Regan Thomas, who is a faded actor famous for playing a superhero named Birdman in a film trilogy in the early 1990s, and is tormented by the mocking and cynical voice of Birdman and frequently visualizes himself performing feats of levitation and telekinesis. Regan is trying to regain recognition in the Hollywood world by writing, directing, and starring in a Broadway adaptation of Raymond Carver's short story, What We Talk About When We Talk About Love. However, the Birdman voice wants Regan to return to blockbuster cinema and insists that he is an essential part of Regan's identity. There's a lot of interesting things about this movie, and I think Michael Keaton's performance comes full circle with his career ultimately. Keaton played Batman in 1989 and 1992 Batman Returns. Kind of like how, he plays the character that played Birdman back in the early 90s. Coincidentally enough, Birdman was a trilogy in the early 90s, according to the film. Michael Keaton was supposed to be in Batman Forever in 1995. Bowed out after Tim Burton was essentially, I don't want to say fired, but they did not want Tim Burton back, and I can make a whole video about how that went down, but I won't. Regardless, Keaton was supposed to be in Batman Forever, but when Joel Schumacher took over, Keaton obviously, if anybody's been watching him recently, said in an interview that there was just creative differences between what Tim Burton had done and how Michael Keaton thought the character should continue to develop going into that movie. And then obviously what Joel Schumacher did, which was completely bonkers, and the movie just... Nothing against Val Kilmer. If anybody's watched some of my previous videos, I did talk about Val Kilmer and how he felt about doing Batman, and it did not bode well for him there either. So, but there's a correlation there between Birdman and Batman with Michael Keaton, and I think it was easy for him to try and play this character in accordance with his own career. Now, the way this movie was shot, the cinematography is unbelievable. There's a lot of long takes in this movie, one-shot takes. In fact, the film only has like 16 cuts in it as far as transitioning from one scene to another scene or from one actor to another actor. So there were times where actors were on, doing these one-shot takes with like up to 15 pages of dialogue. And if anybody follows insider stuff, usually a page is about a minute film time. So 15 pages, you're talking 15-minute dialogues between two actors who have to not only do these long takes, do this dialogue, they also have to coordinate with where they're supposed to be for the shot, if it's a walking scene, a moving scene, fight scene, whatever the case may be. The film went on to win 4 Academy Awards. Best director, best screenplay adaptation, best cinematography, overall best picture. Michael Keaton was nominated for best actor. I believe Edward Norton and Emma Stone were both nominated for best supporting actors. Unfortunately, Keaton did not get best actor that year. That went to, I don't even remember, some young guy who played Stephen Hawking for a Stephen Hawking biopic, which I have not seen, but I can imagine that there was probably some sitting down and talking through a robot's voice in that movie. Anyways, that's neither here nor there. I'll have to look into that to be sure. But regardless, Keaton unfortunately did not get the Academy Award for Best Actor, even though he was nominated for it. But really, really crazy. And the other cool thing about the movie is that it was shot in sequential sequence. So as the movie is played out on screen, that's exactly how it was shot, and that's a rarity to do in movies these days. But given the long takes, the one-shot takes, it almost had to be done that way in order to stay in lines with the storyline and to keep the actors cohesive with having to do so much dialogue and trying to remember, 15 pages worth of dialogue to go through. In fact, Edward Norton and Michael Keaton actually had they were running tabs on who would screw up the most with their lines. And coincidentally, Emma Stone, who's a brilliant actress, messed up the most. And the one that didn't mess up the most was Zach Galifianakis. I would have never thought that. It was said that Galifianakis actually did mess up his lines a lot, but was really good at going with the flow and kind of riffing as he would make the mistake, and they would continue to use that shot in the movie. So he did a really good job, kind of ad-libbing as he would make a mistake to keep the film rolling. So kudos to him, and a big kudos to Michael Keaton, who this video was about. Obviously, we're all looking forward to him in Flashpoint, being Bruce Wayne / Batman again, and we get to see him again, hopefully next year in Batgirl, and that should be interesting as well. So, and I could go on and on about Batman and Batman movies, but I'm not going to. I'm going to try and keep this short because it's running a little long, but that's my take on Michael Keaton's 3 lesser-known and obscure movies. Maybe not Birdman so much, but Pacific Heights, Clean and Sober. Be sure to check out any of these films. Like, subscribe, and comment to the YouTube channel. Feel free to share the video. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. What's your favorite Michael Keaton movie? Me personally, I really like Pacific Heights. I really like Birdman, but Batman's always going to be Batman. So that's my favorite. That's my take, and I will see you guys in the next video.